Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Roberta DiPietro, the Executive Director of the Greater Miami Festivals and Events Association. And in case you don't know about us, we were founded in 1985 to support the success of festivals and events. If it weren't for this COVID outbreak, we would have all been in a personal, fun, great time yesterday meeting at the fairgrounds. It would have been a day filled with networking, workshops, vendor expo, a performance showcase, and everything you need to provide enhancements for your events. We hope to see you all next year in person. Instead, today you're seeing the second of a 5-part series of our virtual mini conference and navigating rough seas. Next week, we will have webinars on Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. and our virtual happy hour on Wednesday, June 17th at 4. Tuesday, June 16th, we'll look at marketing on a budget. Wednesday, June 17th at 4, we'll have our happy hour where we celebrate our stakeholders and show how to provide hands-on ideas to do that for your stakeholders as well. We're having a demonstration of how to hold a wine tasting, so that could be fun. And Thursday, we're going to look into executing new contracts in the new normal. To register for other workshops and events, visit festivalsmiami.com. We have many attendees today, so we've turned off video and microphones. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function. At this time, I'd like to turn our program over to Ron. Let me see if I get it right. Kaniuk.
You got it right.
Oh, yay. To present our workshop on steering through uncharted waters. Thank you, Ron.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. I'm an attorney based in Delray Beach and practice all through the state of Florida. And a good portion of my practice is representing small businesses and nonprofits, and happy to provide some legal tips in these uncharted waters. So where we are, June 11th, 2020. It's been 3 months since NBA star Rudy Gobert tested positive for coronavirus, resulting in the immediate suspension of the 2019-2020 NBA season and signaling the start of America's COVID-19 quarantine. In the days that followed, we've come to a halt. Examples, pro sports were suspended, the NCAA basketball tournament was canceled, Disney World and all other amusement parks closed, shelter-in-place rules in quarantine, work from home became the norm, and we've had massive unemployment. Just this morning, the report was that 1.5 million people filed for unemployment claims last week, and the 3-month total is now 43 million unemployed. Where we are going. So only now are we starting to emerge from quarantine and isolation. Many questions remain. How all of this will affect us, our families, our neighbors, our businesses, and our lifestyles remain unknown. It is certainly uncharted waters, and we are facing these challenges alone together. I saw a great article, 11 hypotheses on how life may change in a post-pandemic world. The link is in the slides, and we'll be providing the slides to everybody. But the list was that we're going to have changes in how this affects personal hygiene, education, perception of space and architecture, more communication for more uses. This webinar is a perfect example of that. Changes in supply chains and mobility, work environment and work from home, stress relievers, focus on joy, and then a notation that time heals wounds and makes us forget, and that loving kindness and emotions endure. It's a really nice article, not by me, and recommended reading for you. So small business statistics. Florida is a big small business state. There are more than 2.5 million small businesses in Florida. Over 550,000 of them are small business employers. 88% of all employer businesses are small businesses with fewer than 20 employees. Small businesses comprise 99.8% of all businesses in the state. And Florida's small businesses employed 3.4 million people, representing 41.6% of all private sector employees. Nonprofit statistics. There are over 1.3 million nonprofit organizations in the United States. The terms nonprofit and tax exempt are often used interchangeably. There are more than 36 types of tax exempt organizations: 501c3 for religious, charitable, scientific, literary, or educational organizations, 501c4 for social welfare organizations, that includes your homeowners associations, 501c6 chambers of commerce. I'm on the board of the Delray Chamber and member of several others. Nonprofit does not mean no profits. It only means no individual stock ownership and no payment of profits to anyone. So crisis response. Don't panic. Everyone is facing the same COVID-19 health crisis and business problems. Safety first. Your first priority should be the health and safety of you and your family, as well as your employees, customers, and clients. Review your situation. Organize your legal, financial, and insurance documents. Schedule meetings with your trusted professionals, your attorney, accountant, and insurance agent, among others. Identify and continue critical business operations and services. Work to minimize the disruption to operations and minimize immediate damage. Conserve cash and plan for the worst. This applies to your individual and business finances. Use technology to remain visible. Embrace virtual meetings and the internet. Communicate with clients, customers, colleagues, and friends. Network as much as possible, even in isolation and quarantine. Plan and adjust. Focus on 30, 60, 90, 120-day increments and adjust as necessary. Change is going to be anticipated. So things you need to know, business and nonprofit organizational issues. Maintain your corporate form. Forming a business, whether it be a corporation, partnership, limited liability, or nonprofit, creates a separate and distinct entity and provides protection from personal liability. So corporate records help substantiate the existence of your business. They provide protection from lawsuits and creditors and substantiate significant tax deductions, regardless of whether your business makes a profit. This is for businesses, not nonprofits. If a corporation or LLC doesn't make a profit, it still may generate significant tax deductions for you on your personal tax return. Corporate governance documents, articles of incorporation or articles of organization, corporate bylaws or company regulations, organizational minutes, annual reports, stock and membership register, corporate minutes. Annual reports are due June 30th. Each year, you must update your corporate records at sunbiz.org and designate a registered agent in the state of Florida to accept service of process and other documents on behalf of your company. Normally, annual reports would have been due on May 1st. This year, due to COVID, the deadline was extended to June 30th. Do not miss that deadline. If you haven't filed your annual report, please make sure to do so. Additional requirements for nonprofits. So the IRS requires three things: a dissolution clause, that there be no political activity, and that you have an exempt purpose. Florida has 4 rules. You need a founder, you need a registered agent, you need a physical location, and you need a solicitation license. Special issues for nonprofits. You need an independent board of directors, which will hire the president, CEO, or executive director, who will in turn hire and oversee staff and the organization. Small boards risk exempt status if they are too insular. You don't want just a family running a charity. You want other people involved. There are strict requirements for a solicitation of funds. Disclosure and transparency are essential to good governance, and nonprofits are subject to investigation by federal and state governments. Protecting your business. Review corporate formation and governance documents. Ensure compliance and timely filing. Annual reports for 2020 are now due on June 30th. Maintaining complete and accurate corporation records helps you protect yourself from personal liability. Assess overall business operations and continuity. Address employer and employee issues such as furloughs, terminations, and overall work issues. Review and update your employment manual, including for independent contractors. Review contracts and leases. Determine practicality of performance and any exculpation clauses that may relieve you from liability. Review business interruption insurance policies and document losses, including but not limited to timing, business metrics, and new and increased expenses incurred to respond to the pandemic and specific activity related to your business interruption. Apply for any and all assistance from federal, state, and local governments, banks, and other programs. Insurance coverage. You should review all of your insurance coverage annually and make sure you have the proper types of insurance coverage for your company or nonprofit. Professional liability, with errors and omissions, and directors and officers, commercial property insurance, workers' comp, automobile, product liability if necessary, business interruption, an umbrella policy on your homeowner's insurance or other insurance policy for any home-based businesses. Applicable employment laws. You've got to keep track of and comply with a whole host of federal and state employment laws. The list of significant ones: the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Family and Medical Leave Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, better known as HIPAA, National Labor Relations Act, and then the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES. Those both have significant employer provisions. Employment law issues. Employers must differentiate between full-time, part-time, and independent contractors. Businesses with on-site employees need to be mindful of applicable regulations intended to keep their employees and customers safe. You should seek guidance from Occupational Safe and Health Administration and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for those who want to be prepared for a return to the workplace when circumstances permit. Protect intellectual property. Does your website include up-to-date legal terms and policies, and is it ADA compliant? Have you registered trademarks for your business name and logo? Have you registered copyrights for your visual content? Have you filed patents for your inventive processes and products? Do you understand the scope of work for hire and have agreements with third-party developers and vendors? CARES Act and the Payroll Protection Program. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act was passed by Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support, signed into law on March 27th. The Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, as part of the CARES Act, aimed to provide qualifying small businesses, nonprofit organizations, veterans organizations, tribal businesses, sole proprietors, and independent contractors with forgivable loans of up to $10 million. Easier said than done. So the act was enacted, CARES and the PPP were enacted in March. We're in June, and on June 3rd, we already had legislative changes. Extended the period in which loans can be forgiven, extended loan forgiveness period, provides forgiveness exceptions for not restoring pre-coronavirus employment levels, decreases thresholds for use of funds for payroll, and extends loan terms for non-forgivable amounts.
Ron, we have a question here.
What's the question?
I'm going to just give it to you. Can I reduce the pay of my full-time staff by 25% for a limited time without incurring any consequences?
I'm going to get to all that stuff. So
okay.
If you let me go through the...
Yeah, that's why I just want to make sure. Even doing so over the 24 weeks, 100% of my PPP funds will go to payroll.
I'm going to that. It's later in my presentation.
Okay, great.
Okay, so went through the changes that were enacted. I'm going to go through them one by one later, but these were the changes that were enacted just last week. So the Payroll Protection Program was designed to let qualified businesses borrow the lesser of 2.5 times of average monthly payroll costs or $10 million, whichever was less. The loan terms are now at 5 years and 1% interest rate, but eligible for forgiveness when the loan proceeds are used for payroll and other allowable expenses, and eligible for loan forgiveness if 60% or more of the loan proceeds were used to maintain full-time equivalent staff on payroll, with no more than 40% or less for other allowable operating expenses, and I'll go into that. So PPP expenses eligible for forgiveness. 60% or more applicable to payroll costs, salaries, wages, commissions, or tips, with a $100,000 max per employee gross earnings. 40% or less applicable to interest on mortgages, commercial property rent, and utilities. All had to have been leases, mortgages, or utility bills had to have been entered into before February 15th. So you can't start a new business and get PPP funds. So qualified payroll. Cash compensation includes gross salary, wages, gross tips, gross commissions, overtime, paid leave, allowance for dismissal or separation, and bonuses. The total for each individual employee may not exceed $15,385 for the covered period, $100,000 prorated. Any amounts paid to owners are capped at $15,385 or the 24-week equivalent of their compensation for 2019, whichever is lower. Other payroll costs which can be included: employer contributions for employee health insurance, including employee-sponsored group health plans, including dental and vision, contributions to retirement plans, and state and local payroll taxes. Workers' comp and federal taxes cannot be included. Personal property items such as copiers, servers, autos, and other common items of personal property that are leased by the business can be included in non-payroll costs that may be forgiven. Interest paid on real and personal property, including equipment, autos, etc., can also be forgiven. PPP time flexibility. So the covered period starts when your lender makes the first PPP loan disbursement, and from that date, you have 24 weeks to use the funds and make the eligible payments. New alternative periods. Borrowers may opt to begin their period on the first day of their first pay period after receiving the first loan disbursement. Practice tip: if you haven't gotten your PPP loan yet, open a new account when the money comes in and use it for the PPP loan proceed for the purposes only. It'll make it easier in the event of an SBA audit. PPP forgiveness tied to employee count. So you have to keep your head count up. The amount of the PPP loan that is eligible for forgiveness will be reduced if the borrower decreases its full-time employees. The reduction percentage is determined by the average number of full-time employees during the covered period divided by either the period from February 15th to June 30th, 2019, or January 1, 2020 to February 29th, 2020. Seasonal businesses have to use the first option. Headcount exceptions. The SBA will now allow for exceptions and workplace reductions for an employee who was fired for cause, who voluntarily resigned, who voluntarily requested and received a reduction in hours, or who declined a rehire offer. Documentation is key. All of this needs to be written, not verbal communication. You're only allowed to claim this if the individual position was not filed by a new employee. PPP Safe Harbor. So if you laid off or furloughed employees, you must bring them back onto your payroll so that your headcount reflects what it was when you applied for the PPP loan. If you decreased your number of full-time employees between February and April of this year, you can qualify for full-time reduction if you restore those levels by December. So the PPP forgiveness is tied to wages. For the covered period, you need to pay employees at least 75% of their wage rate from January through March. Any amount of wages reduced in excess of 25% employee will not be forgiven. But again, you have safe harbor. You have until December 31st to eliminate reductions in excess of 25%. Self-employed payroll caps. So there's a limitation on owner employees and self-employed payroll forgiveness. It's the lesser of $15,385 or the 24-week equivalent of their 2019 compensation. Non-cash compensation for owners is excluded, effectively removing health insurance, retirement benefits, and employer-paid state and local unemployment compensation taxes. Updated guidance clarifies that self-employed cannot claim entire PPP as income replacement. PPP and SBA review. So the May 13th Treasury frequently asked questions provides a safe harbor for all loans under $2 million, deeming them made in good faith. This is going to reduce the number of audits. The SBA can review any and all loans to determine eligibility and accurate calculations for forgiveness. Borrowers must retain their PPP documents for at least 6 years after the loan is forgiven or paid in full. It's going to be a long look back. So the forgiveness time frame. Once you file an application for forgiveness with your PPP lender, they will take 60 days to review it and let you know the forgiveness amount. Banks will then notify the SBA of the amount, and the SBA will have 90 days to approve. This may possibly get adjusted. There are so many loans that the paperwork may be difficult to process in these time periods. So PPP tips for maximizing forgiveness. Remember that the Payroll Protection Program's purpose, say that 3 times fast, was to preserve employee salaries during the pandemic and quarantine. To maximize your potential PPP loan forgiveness, you need to make sure you're not reducing the number of full-time employees or equivalents or their wages. You need to make adjustments to avoid reduction penalties, and you need to ensure that what's left over is only spent on approved overhead expenses. So here's some PPP statistics. Nationwide, there were 4,475,599 loans, received an unimaginable amount of money. You can't even, Florida, there were 343,000 loans, representing 7.67% of all loans. And the monies received in Florida represented 5.98% of loan funded. The average PPP loan totaled $88,000 and change. Financial problems beyond PPP. There are ways to negotiate with your bank, landlord, creditors, and vendors. You should consult with professionals and develop a strategy and a plan. You should be honest and ask for help. You should accept short-term victories and be prepared to renegotiate later. Bankruptcy is a last resort. For a distressed business or individuals, bankruptcy is generally an option of last resort. Has costs and risks. The difficulty in this environment is that no business can make realistic projections on future earnings. No industry is unaffected. Nearly every industry is suffering now. The smart strategy is to start planning ahead. Distressed business leaders should begin working with experienced bankruptcy professionals now to start evaluating their options. And just some bankruptcy basics. Chapter 7 is a liquidation option for individuals and businesses, but the discharge of debts that a debtor receives in Chapter 7 only applies to individual Chapter 7 debtors. I've been speaking to a number of businesses that have been exploring the issue of possibly going out of business. And, bankruptcy is an option for the individual, but the Chapter 7 bankruptcy for the business really doesn't make a lot of sense unless there are significant tax liabilities. Chapter 11 is a restructuring option for businesses and for individuals whose assets and liabilities exceed the Chapter 13 limits. And there are new provisions to streamline the process for small business debtors. And then Chapter 13, restructuring option available to individuals only, different from Chapter 7 in that you keep your assets and you make monthly payments over a 3 to 5 year period. So planning for the future. Update your disaster recovery, business continuity, and crisis communication plans. I hate to be the bearer of even worse news, but we've entered hurricane season. So even though we're exiting quarantine and exiting shelter in place and trying to get back to normal, that normal can be disrupted at any time by the weather. Assess your business resumption process and procedures. If you haven't already done so, create a COVID-19 back to work plan. Update telecommunicating, disaster response, and crisis communication policies and procedures. Update your risk profile and mitigation plan. Review your insurance policies, including business interruption insurance plans, and edit and update your business plan. So concluding thoughts. COVID-19 is going to have significant sweeping impact on our lives and our businesses. These are uncharted waters. Businesses will need to adjust to these health challenges and societal concerns. Social distancing, telecommunicating, and virtual meetings are going to be a part of our vocabulary and lifestyle for a significant time. Is there a second wave coming? We don't know. What kind of economic impact? We're in a recession. The question is whether it gets worse before it gets better. Consulting professionals can save time and money going forward. And I'm going to open up to questions, but I'm just going to go through the final slides first. So just so you have a little background about me, I'm an attorney, nearly 25 years experience. I clerked for a bankruptcy judge when I started my legal career. I'm licensed to practice in Florida, New York, and New Jersey, and multiple federal courts. I have my law degree, my undergraduate degree from Northwestern, and both my law degree and my Master of Laws in Bankruptcy from St. John's. As I said, I'm active in Chamber of Commerce in Delray. I'm on the board of directors and the executive committee. I've been a president and board member of my HOA, and I'm married with 3 kids. My firm focuses on representing individuals, small businesses, and nonprofits with their legal issues, consumer law, bankruptcy, business and corporate law, urgent disaster relief issues, and happy to be a sounding board to any and all of you who participated today. I'm going to be sharing the slides. The material was prepared by me. Presentation was meant to provide an overview of issues that you might face during and after COVID. Much of the information is with regard to COVID-19 financial relief opportunities. It's subject to change without notice. And I prepared this presentation specifically for the Greater Miami Festivals and Events Association, and they have a limited license to use and distribute the materials.
Thank you, Ron. We have several questions.
I'm sure.
Okay, so back to the one where he or she can reduce the pay of my full-time staff by 25%.
You can't reduce the pay. That's part of the whole PPP, is that it's designed, whatever you applied for, whatever you said you were paying staff, you need to be paying staff.
Okay. And then the next one is, what would you recommend for a small business in the travel industry that is looking at over a million plus in potential refunds due to cancellations?
You're going to have to see if you can get PPP funds. I know a couple of travel agents who have. You're going to have to try to focus on rebooking those travel so that it turns into a rebooking rather than a straight cancellation. And then quite possibly, call me or another attorney to map out some longer term plans on all of that.
Okay. And for those of us that aren't quite sure, when do you file for the PPP forgiveness?
Well, first you have to get the PPP loan.
Right.
And then get all the documents from the lender, and then talk to the lender about what specific procedures they might want. There are general forms from the SBA, but everything is being driven by individual lenders. That's why at the beginning of this was such a mess, because Congress put this fund together and then sent it over to the SBA, and then the SBA said, okay, we're going to have our SBA lenders go do this. So you had everybody racing to their bank. Some of their banks don't do SBA loans. And so that was problem number one. And then it was how the individual banks wanted to do the procedures to intake the applications and go through everything else.
And we know from some of our people that it was best to move from your bigger
bank to a smaller bank. Yes, but there was a gap period where where people were being told that if you opened a new account somewhere, you weren't going to be considered for a PPP by that lender. So that was a disconnect in that process as well, and delayed a lot of people from getting the PPP funds initially.
Okay, then I have another question. How about sole proprietorship? Is that covered for PPP?
They're designed to be, included in this, but again, you have to prepare the same document, show the documentation.
Okay, and before I move on to the other questions, this is my question. Are any of these still open? Can you still apply to any of them?
They're generally open. I think it's going to be open until June 30th. So
is there any money left?
There's some money left. I mean, But the key is to not just focus on the PPP.
Uh-huh.
Almost every, the state ran out of money, but the counties and cities and municipalities were given PPP funds themselves or have made other funds available through their budgets. So it's really important for business owners and nonprofits, and if you have a company of any kind, to contact your county and your city and local governments, wherever you're located, and find out what programs they have. Broward has programs. I know that Coral Springs is doing things. Palm Beach County, had a program. Of course, they, ran out of money after day one that they opened it up. But, Delray's doing stuff. Boca's doing things. West Palm is doing stuff. So Palm Beach Gardens, the Chambers of Commerce have resources. Really call everybody and anybody and ask what funds, what emergency, disaster funds from COVID are available, and try to get it.
Okay. Our next question, I think you're going to cover next Thursday, is do you recommend, I think it means including a force majeure clause in agreements?
I recommend it. We're going to have to edit those, post-COVID, because, this was even for force majeure clauses, this was an unexpected, catastrophe. But that'll be in my presentation next week.
Okay, next Thursday at 10, right here.
Yes.
If your business is totally independent contractors, can you apply for PPP?
You can apply for your income losses and your business expenses, but the PPP is designed for each independent contractor to be applying for their own PPP funds.
Okay, and then we have.
Because you don't want what you don't want is you don't want your independent contractors double dipping. You don't want them getting money from you and then getting money separately on their own.
Okay, and what do you recommend for a person with a small business who first had a major injury due to an assault and was unable to work, and then got contracts which were subsequently canceled due to COVID? As a result, took out IRAs and now have a lot of tax debt which cannot be paid.
Well, there are two pieces to that. So the first is, there are a couple of things. More complicated. I want to separate it. I want to go through it so that I hit all of the items. You have first a major injury due to an assault. That's a criminal act, and it's also something that you can recover from somebody for civil liability for. So you should consult with an attorney regarding the tortfeasor who committed the assault on you and what options are available in terms of the criminal prosecution on the assault, the restitution that might come from a criminal conviction, and the civil liability that person would have to you for the assault and your subsequent injuries. So there is a source of money there from that piece. Then the second item is that you say you returned to work and got contracts, and those contracts were subsequently canceled due to COVID. That's what the Payroll Protection Program and the other relief is designed for. So separately, you'd be able to apply for those monies. The third piece is that you might have, and I go dovetail back to it, you might have had health insurance or other insurance from your business or personal that you could recover against for the assault and the injury. So there's money there. And then lastly, if you took out money from the IRAs and now have tax debt, you really should, talk to your accountant and a bankruptcy lawyer. Eventually, some tax debt can be discharged in bankruptcy. It just can't immediately be discharged in bankruptcy. So there are waiting, you have to file the tax returns timely, and there's a waiting period, 3 to 5 years, and then those tax liabilities can potentially be dischargeable. But you would want to plan your other asset protection issues to protect your other assets in the event that you needed to take that course of action. So that's a complicated question with a huge mouthful. And I would love to talk to you offline privately and go through some more of that piece by piece.
Okay, our next question is, what type of paperwork do you need to apply for a PPP? Is it a tax return from 2019 or?
You're going to need 2018 and 2019 tax returns. You're going to need your payroll. Each individual bank is going to have some different paperwork requirements. So you really ought to consult with where you do your banking, see if they're still processing PPP loans, and talk to your banker about what paperwork they want and what form they want it in.
Okay, and I have, would you be able to talk offline about fighting chargebacks?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. You know, a lot of that's going to depend on what your agreements provided for, and you know, there are ways to fight the chargebacks, and then other options available if you get stuck with too many to handle at once. And it's not just chargebacks. I've been dealing with that with a lot of businesses where either orders were canceled, or I am working with a bunch of summer camps and summer programs where they took deposits and those programs were canceled. People, a lot of this, everybody got caught off guard by this. This was not, nobody could have ever imagined this, except in a sci-fi movie. And so, no, it's the truth. And so a lot of people operate their businesses and they get deposits, and unlike with a landlord-tenant situation where you're obligated by law to segregate your deposits in a separate account for the protection of the tenant who gets that security deposit back if there's no damages. A lot of people use their deposits, use their prepayments as income, over the course of the year, expecting to deliver the goods or services when those goods or services or products are ready for delivery or and so a lot of people don't have the money available in their bank accounts to provide these refunds right now. So one of the things to consider, to be honest, is a Chapter 11 bankruptcy where you could spread out the payment of refunds over a much larger period of time. So that's the issue.
Okay.
And then I can see the questions now. The next question is, you have no cancellation policy for events. Do you have to refund if you have a high overhead on the events? The problem is that the high overhead, and I'm not trying to be dismissive about this. I fully recognize and appreciate the problem. But the high overhead is not your vendor or customer's problem. So you can't, if you don't have a cancellation policy and somebody wants a refund, you're going to have a problem telling them that you can't give them a refund because of the overhead or because you spent it already. So I'd love to talk to you offline and figure out what the scope of the issue is and how best to navigate it.
Okay, we have more questions in the chat.
Okay.
If special events are not going to be able to happen until the end of the year 2021, can event production agencies and vendors qualify for any sort of extended protection and timeframes?
This is all going to be a work in progress. Unfortunately, what I've gone through with you in the PPP is all we have right now. As we get, it's June. As we get closer and closer to November, we are going to get I think less and less cooperation between Republicans and Democrats and Congress and the White House in order to get new legislation enacted. The opposite might be that if it gets really worse, they might have to work together like they did in 2008 when Obama and McCain were running against each other. But right now, I don't see any appetite for new legislation. And I think it's going to be a wait and see. And I think that businesses are going to have to fend for themselves. And I always recommend that businesses have an on-call attorney. But right now, more than ever, I implore you, whether it's me, and I love the business, but whether it's me or somebody else, consult with a business attorney, preferably somebody who has some experience with bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is not going to be the dirty word that it's always been in the past. The stigma that sometimes gets associated with bankruptcy is not going to be there in 2020 and 2021 because the global reach of this pandemic and the unimaginable effect on people is going to lead to a lot of people filing for bankruptcy when the business or individuals never would have anticipated it. But please get ahead of it. Do not bury your head in the sand. Do not ignore the problem. Consult an attorney. Talk with us. Let us walk you through what the options are. There are going to be baby steps that can help you recover.
Okay, I have also, has there been any talk about extra support for businesses related to events and entertainment, which are still not sure when we can restart operations and gatherings?
Yeah. Again, nothing right now. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis. I think you ought to be looking to county and local governments for whatever financial aid they can provide beyond the PPP. And then, talk to banks and again, talk to your attorney and walk through all your agreements, all your leases, all your contracts and see what you can do to modify your obligations under them. As an example, bankruptcy is a powerful tool. McClatchery, the newspaper chain that owns the Miami Herald, is currently in Chapter 11. Just yesterday, they announced that they were rejecting their lease for their headquarters. They already got rid of their original headquarters that had their printing plant last year, and they let the Sun Sentinel start doing their printing out of the Sun Sentinel's Deerfield Beach press facility. They moved to a facility in Doral. They have 120,000 square feet of office space. They rejected that lease yesterday to limit their liability under that lease. They announced that all of their employees who work in their Miami location are going to work remotely through the end of the year. And then in 2021, they're going to reevaluate their options for where they will have a new business office headquarters, how much space they will have, and how it will be configured. So, individual small businesses shouldn't feel stigma when big businesses have no shame about using the bankruptcy code to their advantage. And for businesses in the entertainment and events industry, where you're being shut down for an indefinite period of time, there are going to be long-term issues that you have to deal with. And I implore you to talk to your attorney, your accountant, your financial advisors, and see what your best options are.
Okay, then we are a free digital art guide, artcircuits.com, and we received the PPP. What will be our utilities? We pay monthly services from Apple, Google, MailChimp, etc. could we submit those new utilities from the digital world?
You can here's the thing. You should certainly make the attempt. I think that there's a very reasonable basis to make the argument that those are utilities and that it applies. The worst thing that happens is that the bank or the SBA rejects that portion as forgivable, and then you're paying it on a very low interest rate that you never would have gotten under normal circumstances. So I would try to whatever you can identify in the categories of expenses, I would do so, and then see what happens later. Again, this is a new world, so it's not like we have full guidance on how this has been handled before. It's never been done before. So, get, as I've said to people all the time, get as much PPP money as you can get as much other, financial resources from grants and state and local municipalities as you can. Worry about paying it back later.
Okay, well, that's the end of our questions, it looks like. Ron, I want to thank you so much. And like he said, we're going to have the slideshow and the recording of this up on our website, festivalsmiami.com. And next Tuesday, we're looking at marketing on a budget. And next Thursday, we're having Ron back to talk about contracts and what our contracts and agreements and communications with our clients, vendors, supporters, stakeholders will need to look like in the future. And hopefully, Ron, in a couple of months, we could have you back to bring us up to date on anything newsworthy that we can still continue, because right now I think events are going to be the last thing to open, and how we do that.
Yeah, so, and you're going to need to be creative. I mean, the Miami Dolphins are turning their stadium into a drive-in movie theater, and are going to do drive-in movies starting this Friday to try and repurpose the facility and at least get people there and use their massive arena and use their parking lot to be able to do some stuff that's social distancing and different, but at least generates revenue for them. So, be creative, think outside the box, call or email me with any, individual participants today. You can reach me at my office, 561-292-2127. It's 561-292-2127. My email is ron@countylaw.office.com. But if you can't spell that, I have an extra website that's coviddebtproblems.com. And you can go there and set up an appointment with me, free consultation. We can go through some of these issues that affect each individual business owner. So happy to be a resource now, next Thursday, going forward for the GMFEA, and one-on-one, I always do free consultations.
Thank you so much, and I thank everyone for joining us this morning, and stay safe. We hope to see you Tuesday at 10 for Marketing on a Budget, and then Wednesday, we're having our happy hour where we're doing a virtual wine tasting event. It's a demonstration of how you can provide something for your stakeholders. So hopefully see you Tuesday at 10. Wednesday.
And just a final, sorry for interrupting, a final plug for Tuesday's program. Amanda, who's one of the speakers, did my websites. So, and that's how I came to you guys. So she's great, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that as well. So thank you all for coming today. And if you have any questions, email us at info@festivalsmiami.com, and we'll get you all of Ron's information or whatever you need. Thank you all for coming. Stay safe, and let's keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.